Okay,
We're good
good,
to go.
yeah.
Okay, so for those of you, everybody here knows me, but some of you out there may not know me. My name is Dr. Duncan McCollum. And what keeps our bodies healthy, right? So we call it the triangle of health. There's the physical side of the triangle, which is all structure. It's bones. It has to do with a bone getting knocked out of place, pinching a nerve, causing that nerve not to work very well to that body part, and that will cause pain, organ dysfunction, weakness in the muscles. It can cause, when you get organ dysfunction, fatigue or digestive disorders, whatever. Because if I have a nerve in my neck that goes to my heart, and I cut that nerve, my heart stops, right? It's pretty basic. But if I have just a little pressure on that nerve, my heart will work, but it won't work very well. So it will either beat too much or too slow. Traditionally, we go to the doctor and they give us a medication to handle that symptom, but it's not really ever getting to the cause of the problem. So tonight I really want to try to cover enough information for you to understand where we're getting to the cause of the problem. Does that make sense? A little bit? So we're going to start with the structural part, and then we're going to start talking about the second part of the triangle, which is chemicals. This has to do with hormones. The brain controls all the hormones in our body, the thyroid, the pancreas for diabetes issues, the adrenal hormones that are fight or flight. They help you survive or run faster than your friend when you're being chased by a bear. You know, you just have to run faster. The spiritual aspect of it, regardless, stress will affect our body. It will affect our mind. Physical stress on our body makes us feel terrible if we're in pain. Kills that part. So I'm going to flip over to this chart for a minute. So when we look at health, when we define health, health is a state of optimal mental, physical, and social well-being. Wherever you go, you're enjoying life, you can have the fun that you want to do, you can eat what you want to do, you can exercise, and you feel good enough to go visit friends. It's not merely the absence of disease. So a lot of times when people have a problem, they'll take a medication for it to cover up that symptom. And then what ends up happening is that symptom gets worse and worse and worse. It's like if I had a cavity, a small cavity, and I just took pain pills for the cavity, and I never handled the cavity, pretty soon I have a root canal. Then they have to pull the tooth out. It would have been a lot better to fix the problem early on. So this is a definition in a medical dictionary, but in a Webster's dictionary it says health is a condition of wholeness in which all of the organs are functioning at 100% all of the time. We're talking about health. I'm going to skip over. And the way our bodies develop, when birth or when life begins, we have splits and splits. And then pretty soon, in fact, we have two babies that were born 6 and 9 days ago to our patients, which is real exciting. I'm looking very forward to checking the babies because coming down that birth canal can be kind of rough. So these cells, until by day 16, all of a sudden you see the brain, the spinal cord, and all 31 spinal nerves start to develop by day 16 inside the womb. The body's being differentiated, everything is being separated out. And that's pretty amazing. But what happens is when we take a look at how we address illness in our country, well, let me just say this. The purpose of the brain and nervous system is to control and coordinate the functions of all tissues and organs and systems in the body. So by day 16, inside mom, it's all being controlled. But by the time a baby comes out, grows up, has some kind of disease or an accident or injury, rather than teaching the body how to heal itself, all of a sudden we have to give it all these other kind of things like medications and drugs and stuff to cover up the symptom. So that's not necessarily the right way to go. This is what the brain and nervous system looks like an adult, the brain is the only organ in the body completely encased in bone, so it's very, very protected. Pretty important. 31 spinal nerves go to every cell and organ in your body. So again, when we have an injury that cuts off a nerve or damages that nerve, if it goes to your heart, it's not going to work very well. If it goes to your liver, it can stop your liver from functioning. You can get all kinds of digestive disorders because the liver controls that. Lungs, heart, any of those things that get damaged by a nerve being pinched, it's not going to work so well. Does that make sense to you guys? So when we're adjusting you, what we're looking for is we're looking for when a bone got knocked out of place by an accident or injury or just, you know, sitting too long in one position, and it's pinching that nerve. So when that goes away and degenerate that disc, when we have you come in to treat you, we're moving that bone a little bit each time. And the problem is that these muscles have gotten so, they've shrunken up so much because what happens when a bone gets knocked out of place, it locks in place and it no longer moves. The nerve doesn't get any nourishment. Wherever that nerve goes, you're going to have trouble. So when we go in and adjust it, we're going to make those move again correctly, but now we've got to strengthen the muscle. And that's one of the main purposes for tonight, is to teach you how to strengthen the muscles so when we're moving your bones, that the muscles can now become strong enough so that they can do the job they're supposed to. And that's the most important exercise I think there is. And I want you all to do this with me if you can. If it causes any pain, don't. But go ahead and scoot up to the end of your chair here. And so we're sitting nice and straight like this. You have all these spinal bones. And we're going to move this bone on this one, this bone on this one, this bone on this one. We're going to start to exercise these little muscles in here that cause these bones to move. Because again, when they get locked out of place, the muscles atrophy like you had your arm in a cast. So as I'm adjusting your spine and getting these moving again, we've got to strengthen the muscle. So it's kind of an easy exercise, but sit like this. And if this hurts, don't do it. And then I want you to start to rotate back and forth. Did I show you this the other day? No? And then,
I do it every day anyway.
oh, you do? Sitting?
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to do it with your hands rubbing your legs, so all the way down on the bottom. And now slowly move your arms up a little bit at a time. So every rotation you come up a little bit. And you're going to, if it hurts, don't do it, but you want to get up between your shoulders, up into this area. Stay there for a minute, and then work your way back down. So basically, we are, just like going to a gym, we're working out those muscles. And if you do this every day, over a period of weeks, your spine's going to get stronger. So if I went into the gym like this, you know, I go, hi, I want to join the gym. And then I worked out and I come out like this. You notice that there's big arteries. Have you ever seen people with huge vein muscles? The blood supply increases. This is really cool. So as we're doing this, we're increasing the blood supply to our spine. We're going to get the nutrients into those discs and into the muscles so your spine can get healthier. We're going to hydrate those discs that dry out again. So, that have dried out. We're going to rehydrate them. So I'm going to show you some examples of some before and after x-rays, 60-ish or over. But if you do something wrong for 1/3 of your life to your spine and your nervous system, it could be very damaging to you. So we want to make sure you're sleeping right. So, hence my color. Anyway, so this is called a body pillow. Does anybody have one of these? Or you can get them at Target for 10. The Targets will be flat in about a week, so spend the 20 bucks. Now, when I adjust you, you know, when I have you come in like this, and there's a reason for that. With your knees bent, the nerve that comes all the way down my back to my toes, when my legs are straight, that nerve is stretched as far as it can be down through the center of my spine. And if there's a bend in my spine and a poking on very uncomfortable. So
what we end up doing is by bending our knees, we protect that nerve, we slacken it a little bit. Hello there.
Hi.
So by putting that under your knees, hi. Hey Luis. So putting this under our knees, we're protecting our low back. And then people make a big mistake with their pillows. They think their pillow is supposed to go under your head like this. And if anybody's looked at their x-ray like this, and I'm putting pressure on my neck, and my neck is being trained to go the wrong way all the way. Some people sleep on 2 pillows or they fall asleep on the couch. You know, don't do that. It's not good for you, no matter what. So, see, when I get in the right position, it's so comfortable. God, that feels good. So when you sleep like this, putting the pillow under your neck, you're getting the right curve, you're getting your low back, and the nerve going down, goes down your legs, and it feeds blood to your toes. It's also opened really well this way. So this is the best way to sleep. The second best way to sleep is on your side. Sometimes people just can't sleep on their back. Is to sleep on your side and put this body pillow between your knees like that. The pillow under your neck more, keeping your neck straight, and then resting like this over this pillow. Now if you look at my back, it's pretty straight, and my hips are straight. Versus if I slept like this, I have this huge amount of weight pulling my hip down, chronically straining this joint here. My spine's twisted, and my spine looks like a corkscrew. And again, when you do that for 8 hours a night, you're going to end up waking up in a lot of pain. Or you're going to damage yourself over time. It's like if anybody ever fallen asleep with their arm off a couch, you know, you wake up and you go, oh, and it's just completely painful because it's overstretched. It's the same thing when you sleep. Like this limb weighs about 50 pounds, so if I have it hanging down, it's a lot of weight on my low back. So we just want to make sure that you are in neutral positions as much as you can. Stomach, okay? And there's a reason for that, because when you sleep on your stomach, your head's going to be twisted like this, or like this, or you'll suffocate. Spine that you actually have an artery through the center of the bone in your neck, and feeds the brain. And just imagine if your neck's twisted like this all night, or like this all night, you're causing pressure on that blood supply going to your head. It can cause restless sleep. Okay. Any questions about sleep? Because we're talking about correcting the spine and catching it in time. And you know, again, I have these two, really looking forward to testing them, checking them, because they're so fun to check. And oftentimes, it's just a little pressure pregnant, and then she's about to deliver, and she contracts and pushes that baby down this little hole, and the baby's head is being jammed against that, you know, little teeny hole until it finally opens up. And sometimes the doctor helps pull it out, and then they hand the baby to mom and say, be careful of the soft spot. Was trip, this baby just took down this tube. It's pretty traumatic. So we want to just check to see if there's anything we can do. I have a story, it's sitting right in there, about this baby. She was born 7 weeks prematurely, and the family moved out here to California, but the mom had to stay in Minnesota because of preemies, right? And the baby could never rest. It was always like this, just jittery as heck. And she couldn't rest. The mother walked in here one day and said that the baby was so tired the baby was born. So, and I said, well, if it is a physical problem, I can help, perhaps. I don't heal anybody. I help the body do what it's supposed to do. So I put the baby on the mom. I had the mom lie down on her stomach, and the baby's doing this. Just a tiny thing. There's a picture right in there of her. And then I just put my hand right on her neck, and she went, about this much pressure right here. Baby fell asleep completely with me not knowing what to do. And I just said, you know, and mom picked her baby up, went home. 2 hours, 3 hours later, in tears.
Who was here at the time came and got me and said, you better talk to this little girl's mom. She's upset on the phone. I'm going, oh great, now what? You know, so I pick up the phone and she says, Dr. McCollum, I don't know what to do. The baby has not woken up. I go, what? She goes, yeah, she's still asleep. And I go, why don't you take a nap? You know, literally, because the mother hadn't slept either. But that's a miracle of opening up the channels of the nerves, okay? And Vito, you got to plug in my thing. If you can imagine that this is the body working at 100%. Every cell and organ, the nerve powers coming down from the brain, going to every cell and organ working at 100%. But then all of a sudden the nerve pinching going to the heart was working like that. There was some pressure on that nerve, damaging the electrical current to the heart. How healthy would that person be? As healthy as the heart, right? What if every organ in the body was working like that, but the one going to the lungs was like this? This particular kid might have asthma, allergies, get every cold that ever came through, you know, and end up with some kind of lung problems, bronchitis and stuff. If every organ was working like this, important for digestion, was working like this, you eat a nice big turkey dinner and all of a sudden you have a gallbladder attack and you end up in the hospital, you know, thinking you have a heart attack because it's the same, very similar symptoms. So when we find this kind of pressure on a nerve damaging or decreasing that flow of energy to the body, and we start to, a little bit at a time, turn that nerve back on and turn that body back on, the body's going to start to repair itself. And that's what we focus on. So I have a couple before and after x-rays here that I think are pretty neat to look at. Success and failure, you know, 3% of the people actually act on something, and most people just think about it and they're bystanders. So when you actually decide to do something, you know you're ahead of the game. Just doing something about your health. Okay, so this first x-ray is a x-ray of a guy, he's about, and this yellow line is where his spine should be. And you can you guys all see the red line, how far off it is to that side there? So he came in, he'd had low back pain for years, he'd ignored it, decided that he never was going to do anything about it, but one day he could barely get out of bed. So but this red line is almost next to that yellow line there. So we went from there to there. Shape. So we put him on something called wellness, where we just check him periodically because he's still lifting lumber and, you know, jackhammering and doing all later. And I don't know if you can see how straight that is. It's almost perfectly straight to there to there. And that, again, a 50-something-year-old taking the pressure off the nerve so the body could heal itself. This is a really interesting one. So a whole inch lower on this side. And you see this really dramatic scoliosis there? I can't help that. This has grown so strong and so solid over the years. There was nothing I could do for him. But what happened is I took a picture of his 10-year-old boy who had no, and you see this really bad developing scoliosis in this kid. So there he was, here he was 6 months later when I re-x-rayed him. His spine is almost perfectly straight. Now could I have done that? We caught this guy at 10 years old and we were able to correct his spine early on. And that's it. It's so much easier to correct somebody, you know, when they're young. It might take a few bucks and a few visits. You get to be, you know, my age and there's an investment, but it is your a gentleman, this guy's actually 70 years old, and this is his jaw, this is the back of his head, and here's his neck. Now, I don't know how well you can see it, but this disc looks really good. This disc is dried up and worn out, and so it says loss of disc space at all these levels. After 6 months, he's actually got almost a perfect surgery up of the bending. Sometimes the spine is so bad we'll never get it to straighten out, but when his did that, I went, wow, that's pretty. This is a low back, and these are artificial discs. She had ended up getting low back pain so bad. She ended up getting convinced that she needed to go to Germany and have artificial, because they were doing discs, like here's a bone, here's a bone. Came back to me about 2 years ago. As I walk, and I fall to the ground. And she goes, and the doctors want to do another one. She goes, I don't want any more surgeries. Like, I don't even know what they can try. So unfortunately, I can't, I'm just trying to get the point across how we can do so much early on. Does that make sense to you? When we adjust you, when you learn to sleep right, when we start getting those spinal corrective exercises, it's going to make a big difference in your life by turning on you. It's just, which is talking about the chemistry. That's the food we put into our body, the air we breathe, the water we drink, the injections we get, the medicines that we've taken, all of that kind of stuff can be poisonous to our body. And right now, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but the United States only has 4% of the world population. Well, states, the world. So 50% of all the drugs, 4% take, and we're still rated 50th in the world for health. So that's pretty bad statistics. I mean, if we had more drugs than anybody else, and they worked, wouldn't we be close to the healthiest person in the country in the world? But we're not. So we got to take a look at what's going wrong with that. So often we have people that come in that have fatigue, mood swings, headaches, migraines, constipation, digestive problems, they can't sleep, muscle pain, skin problems, weight gain. This is a sign of toxins. This is a sign of your body into our body. And one of the things that causes the disease, like the inflammatory diseases we hear about, like rheumatoid arthritis or chronic fatigue syndrome or Crohn's disease where your intestines shrink up, or gastritis, and all of these problems are caused by inflammation or swelling inside the body, swelling inside the bloodstream. You know, Time Magazine, The Silent Killer, Inflammation. Health Magazine, The Cure, Understanding Inflammation in the Body. So we need to understand what's going on. So in order to do that, we look at the human cell. So I'm just going to whip this over. Nothing's alive but cells in our body. We've got 80 quadrillion cells or something like that in our body, but we have 100 trillion bacteria in our body. We have more bacteria than we have human cells. Pretty crazy. But when we look at a cell, that's the live part of our body. It's the only thing that makes up our heart, our lungs. All these organs are made up of individual cells. And the cell gets its energy from there's a little power plant inside the operator on your car. And when you get sugar in your cell, that's gasoline. Sugar gets into that mitochondria and makes energy. That energy, just like every other car, has exhaust, which is toxin. It gets into your bloodstream, goes to a big organ in your body called the liver. The liver is like an oil filter. It cleans, and all the toxic waste goes through your colon, or your large intestine. So when we get the toxins going out and we get good blood coming around, feeding the cells again, it's a beautiful thing. But what's happened, because the gluten and all the sugar that we've eaten, the wheat that we eat, the GMO corn, the altered corn that we get, that is no longer natural, it swells up our intestines. Our intestines start to, they start to break apart, where you can now see there's holes through the intestines that we're getting bad chemicals and food particles and viruses and bacteria into our body. So what happens is the cell wall becomes inflamed. So anybody here ever had poison oak? Yeah, you do have poison oak. Did you use that Antronex?
I did.
Does it help you?
Yeah,
A little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now, if you get poison oak really bad, and I've had it where my eyes were swollen shut. I couldn't see at all. I still had eyes, I just couldn't see. So when your cells get swollen, so what happens, we all know what insulin is, right? With diabetes, insulin. It's a door on your cell to let sugar in to create energy. But when the cells get too swollen, one insulin can't open the door anymore, so pretty soon this organ called the pancreas has to produce a lot more insulin to push open that door. Does that make sense to you? It's like a rusty door. It needs more help. Pretty soon.
WD-40.
Huh? Yeah, WD-40, exactly. We're coming. Medical doctor, right? To push that sugar into the cell. So now that sugar gets in there, energy is made. How easy do you think exhaust or toxins can get out of the cell if we can't get bad out of the cell very easily? It's swollen here too. The door to get the garbage out is also swollen. So what happens is it looks like this. If that's a cell, and all of these little things are doorways for things to go in. We call them receptor sites. This one might like estrogen in, which is a hormone, progesterone, all hormones. This might let thyroid hormone in. This one might let the cortisol from your adrenal glands in. This might let vitamins in. You get the idea? But when your cells get swollen, the receptor sites can't even work anymore. So, and also some of the toxins start to burn off the ends of those receptors because the toxins inside our bloodstream are so bad they're basically damaging the cell. And this is where our problem is. It's causing inflammation. It's free radicals. You've heard of free radicals maybe. The example of this, if I'm driving down the road and I take a hose and stick it in my exhaust pipe and stick that hose in my driver's side window and roll the window up and I'm driving down the road. So I'm driving, I've got power, but the exhaust is coming right back into the car. It's going to kill me eventually, right? Bodies. We're trying to get sugar or insulin into the body. We can't get the stuff out of the body. It starts to damage the cell and it breaks down the power plant called the mitochondria, and it actually will start to damage, our cells will start to lose energy, like that lady that was saying chronic fatigue and stuff. So as that happens, now just imagine you're trying to get thyroid hormone in the cell. Thyroid is really important to give you energy, but thyroid can't get in the cell either. So the doctor gives you more thyroid hormone to get in the cell. Maybe you're a woman that's 40 years old and your hormones are going crazy, so they go, well, you need estrogen. So they give you estrogen because the one estrogen that should get in the cell wall. Pretty soon a guy needs testosterone. Same thing. You got to take more testosterone. The point is, we're drugging the body and the cells to such toxic level that our bodies can no longer handle what's going on. So does that kind of make sense? So we need to undo this, right? And we know how to do it. And it has to do with a lot of what's going on in very current science. So here's the cell wall, and this is the there was somebody from MIT, Dr. Sinnott, who went to the Senate, the government committee in the U.S. documenting that Roundup is increasing almost every chronic disease in our country, but the government wouldn't do anything about it. Roundup was almost, in California, was the only state that was going to have a black box warning on it that says, you know, it's like the Surgeon General warning on cigarettes. Using this product may, at the end, big money got that pulled off of that. But we see this stuff all around. Unfortunately, where I live, if you ever go up Trout Gulch, Valencia, you see that apple orchard that's covered with, you saw all the Roundup in there, right? It just destroyed it. And people go and buy those apples, thinking they're getting a nice fresh apple, and they've got Roundup, which is knowingly destroying our intestinal wall. The other problem is things like mercury. You know, we know that you're not supposed to eat more than one fish a week out of Lake Tahoe. Did you know that? Yeah, that's right. But, because she just got back from Tahoe. But the thing is, any of the lakes in the Sierras, because of it's still in the lakes. But mercury is one of the #1 neurotoxins, gets into our brain, and it actually is opening the door to Alzheimer's disease. And I'll explain that in a little bit more in a minute, but we just kind of want to look at where we're getting these toxins. Now this is a box of organic waffles that I was eating at my sister's house one morning. She was sleeping and I got the box out. I started reading all of the ingredients, and it was really good. It says no synthetic pesticides, hormones, herbicides, preservatives or additives, no genetically engineered. The thing that really got sewage sludge on fields. So why would a box of food tell me there's no sewage on the food I'm eating? Why would they do that? No sewage sludge on fields. What they do, they reconstitute from the sewage plants, and they use that as fertilizer on our food, unless you get organically grown food. Just saying, you know what, if you go buy a box of this now, that line has been taken off. I don't know why that line's taken off, but I don't think they started putting sewage sludge on the fields. I bet you somebody said, you know, because it's going to create so much of a scare. So we just have to be aware of what we're eating. So this is an example of our intestine that's been blown apart by damage, by chemicals like glyphosate, by too many very toxic foods, by the inflammatory foods, which wheat is terribly inflammatory, GMO corn's terribly inflammatory, sugar is terribly inflammatory. So it opens up the door for all these bad things to get into our body, into our cells, and make us sick and cause chronic disease. These are the diseases that are killing people. People don't die of old age anymore. They die of some disease. You know, except for my mother-in-law. She's 97 and she's got a to-do list. As soon as I get home, she's going to tell me to do something. You know, she wants me to cut the trees in my neighbor's yard because they're dead. She goes, will you go cut his trees? I go, no. She goes, well, they're bothering me. They're not my trees. That's my mother-in-law. So anyway, that's an example. And here's another picture of this is the walls of your intestine. This is where the food goes, and then it goes out, right, when you're done. The good food particles are supposed to sneak in these nice little tight junctions. But because of those drugs and chemicals and poisons, it's blowing those open, the junctions open. We call it leaky gut, food intolerances, immune abnormalities, and autoimmune conditions that start to occur because of our digestive system. Pretty crazy. So what's really important, and what some of the top things you're going to hear about in the news, in fact, 3 to 4, probably Tuesday from 3 to 4 too on KSCO, but is the thing called the microbiome. What's causing our bodies to be healthy or sick, we now know, brand new science, is the bugs in our gut. Okay? In the old days, when you got sick, they gave you an antibiotic to kill the infection, but they never told you to fix the bugs in your gut, the bacteria that are friendly, that make us healthy. Now they'll go, oh, take some acidophilus if you want, it's okay. But that's not enough. We've destroyed this. There's thousands of these things called bacteria in our digestive system that eat our food for us and break it down into very healthy nutrition that we can absorb in our body, and it will create life. Well, we wipe them out with stress, with alcohol, with drugs, whether they're medical drugs or street drugs, with the food that we're eating, with the sugar, with the glyphosate. Some people get by really well, but other people, they get sick, and I'll explain why in a minute. But when you take one, if you go and buy the same acidophilus or the same bacteria in the store every year, you take this only one brand. It starts what's called a monoculture, which looks like just one type, and it's not going to be able to help the body. It's not broad enough. It can't handle everything out there. It can only handle one type of problem coming in. So we want to make sure that you're getting a real broad. The chemistry part of health, we call it a three-legged stool. So we have in the middle the stressors, the things that will stress our body out are chemical, which we just talked about, physical, the pinched nerve, or mental. So a boss that you can't stand, you know, a relative that you should not be near, somebody who you hang out with that's bad for you and they're always upsetting you, those things alone will make you sick. We all know that you can worry yourself so much you can get a bleeding ulcer, can eat a hole in your stomach. So we want to make sure that this one this one leg of the stool is fixed. And that we can do by helping you with your spine and helping you put good nutrition into your body, and more importantly, get the bad stuff out. Because if we've been doing bad things to our body for 30, 40 years, it isn't going to get fixed in a week. And a 10-day cleanse isn't going to do for it, or isn't going to do anything for it. It might make you feel good for a second, but it's really important that we do a lot more. So we talked about the microbiome, that's the gut, okay? So the microbiome is huge. It's actually bacteria surrounding our whole body. And when you wash your hands with antibacterial soap, you're actually doing yourself a disservice, because you're killing the good bacteria that's like a force field protecting your body. So you don't want to use that stuff. It's good. It's more damaging than good, because it opens up your pores for more bad things to come in. If antimicrobial soap was getting healthier and healthier and healthier, we're not. We're getting sicker and sicker and sicker. So the third leg of the stool is probably the most important one, and that's our DNA. Those are our genes. That's what is really who we are. So inside the cell, we have DNA, which tells us if we have blue eyes, brown eyes, blonde hair, black hair, 5 fingers, 6 fingers, how tall we're going to be, all that kind of stuff. But in those genes, in the DNA, it also has ones for cancer, for breast cancer, for colon cancer, for prostate cancer, for any type of cancer. So there's also genes for Alzheimer's disease. There's 7 genes that we know of that can, if they get turned on like a light switch, will cause Alzheimer's disease. There's genes for multiple sclerosis, which is one of the things that basically poisons and damages your nerves so you can't use them anymore. There's genes in there for just about every type of disease you can think of, like ankylosing spondylitis. You probably never heard of that, but all these different diseases. And they're just like a light switch. On, off. When you get the polluted cell, you get toxins in the cell, those toxins will turn those switches on and you will now start to get that disease. This is exactly how, they call it epigenetics, top end science right now. They know that only 5% of genetic diseases has to do with the genes. 95% is what the environment does to those genes. That environment is everything we're putting into our body. Does that make sense to you? So one of the other things is we know that if we clean up, calm this stuff down and turn it around, we can actually, maybe if we catch it soon enough, we can eliminate it, but sometimes we can make it so it's a, we don't know for sure that we can turn these off, so we could much longer without that kind of stuff. So it's really important. One thing that I want to talk about, I mentioned insulin. You know that 50% of the adult, or not the adult, 50% of the population in the United States are either have diabetes or they're pre-diabetic. 1 out of 2 of us have diabetes or we're pre-diabetic, meaning we're insulin resistant. Does this cell look insulin resistant? Is it resisting insulin getting into it? If it wasn't resistant, one insulin could get in, right? Well, now we need 2, 3, 4, 5. Why do we need more? Because the cell's resisting the insulin getting in, so they call it insulin resistant. It's pre-diabetic. Why don't we take the swelling out of the cell and make sure that the insulin can get in well? Now, you all know what Alzheimer's is. Alzheimer's is when you lose your mental capacity, right? Guess what other name for diabetes type 3? Alzheimer's disease. So diabetes type 3 is, and they know that too much insulin in your blood gets into your brain and causes Alzheimer's disease. So what happens is the insulin gets into the brain and lays down these basically cement between the neurons or the brain cells, so they can't communicate anymore and you lose your mental capacity. Important in keeping our brain healthy, but also keeping all those genetic diseases turned off so that we can live healthy. Or we just go all the Americans, all the people in our country are doing, and that's just going down the road waiting for something to happen. What happened to my thing? Did I forget to plug it in? I did. Is a couple things. The computer comes on and bails me out. But so, what we have to do, there's three things that we have to do to fix the body. Number one, we have to prepare it. You have to prepare your body to be able to get the toxins, damaged digestive systems. Most of us do. They say 95% of us have some sort of leaky gut. That means we've got the effects of gluten and or, what's that stuff called, glyphosate and or other chemicals that have damaged our intestinal wall. Now, one reason that some people get symptoms and some people don't, or get diseases and some people don't, because every one of us is born with a bucket, a toxin bucket. And they're all different sizes, and you can't choose what size bucket you get. We know that heavy metals like mercury and lead and 278 chemicals get passed from mom to baby in the utero, through the placental blood. 4 generations. So if your great-grandmother was a lead worker, that lead went to her mother, went to her daughter, and went to you. So 4 generations of toxins are now, we know, are coming down into the baby. So this little kid comes into life with a small bucket. The problem is that as soon as this baby gets a couple flu vaccinations, or gets one cold, or eats some food that's bad, and this bucket overflows, that kid is now going to get genetically diseases. She's going to start to turn on those genes, and her immune system's going to go down, because she's already met her threshold. Another kid is like the guy who's like a Sherman tank. He can do whatever he wants. He can, nothing ever phases him. He never gets sick. You know, he goes to all of the cake parties as a kid. And, you know, the thing is, he'll never get sick because his bucket never fills up. It's like my mother-in-law. She's 97, not on any medications, healthy as an ox. But she grew up. She lived near 3 Mile Island when the eruption occurred with that thing. And so now this person, maybe this diseases of the digestive system, and they just start giving them medications to cover them up. You know, Crohn's disease, gastritis, all this stuff. This poor kid, anxiety. You know that anxiety is the #1 symptom from mercury. Most of the kids say that anxiety is high. The kids are all anxious and they're wanting to put them on those mind-altering anxiety drugs. That's when we could potentially get the toxins out of their body and let them live a normal life. It's pretty crazy. So maybe at 20, this person starts to develop some problems with their stomach, and they get something called, oh, now you have Crohn's disease, you know, because between 20 and 30, most men are going to get Crohn's disease who are going to get it. Well, you just happen to be in this category. So the first part of our chemical phase is we're going to start to dump out this bucket for you. But we've got to make sure that the intestines can do it, that those tight, where they've been blown apart by toxins, we've got to tighten those up again. We've got to prepare and repair your digestive system so that you can do a detox. Some of the most mercury and lead is in your brain, and the damage is in here, because the hormones get affected by these two glands in our brain called the hypothalamus and pituitary gland. They control everything, but our brains are being inundated with toxins. So we first prepare the body. That might take 1 to 2 months to just get the body ready to eliminate toxins so we can get the inflammation out of the body. The second phase is actually called the body phase, and this is where we start to go into the organs with some detoxifying agents that are natural, that are going to go and dump the toxins out of the liver, because the liver is like an oil filter that needs to clean the oil. But if the oil's too dirty, I mean, if the filter never gets changed, your oil's bad. Like if I had a bucket of water and had a sponge and I was washing all the walls around here, but I never changed the water, pretty soon it would be so filthy that I would be making the walls more dirty with my sponge. So when our livers are poisoned and toxic and they can't work well, that's what happens. We start to get these inflammatory things going around in our blood system, and we get sick, and we get tired, and we get chronic autoimmune diseases, meaning the wrong cells turn on, and we get arthritis and all these weird diseases that all have millions of drugs to them that never fix the body. They're addressing the symptoms, but they're not going after the cause. So this might take a month or two as well, but the one we're really going for is called the brain phase, and this is where we use an agent that actually can go inside. It crosses a barrier called the blood-brain barrier, and it goes in there and it grabs the heavy metals, the mercury, because mold loves to hang around with heavy metals. And through a few times. Some of us have been around a lot more poisons in our life than other people, and you know, every body's going to react differently, and everybody has a different size bucket filled with toxins from mom. You can always say, if it isn't one thing, it's your mother. So, see if we can get there. Yeah, that just explains the DNA, you know, how the toxins from the microbiome can actually alter our DNA and alter our genes. This is the power plant inside the cell called the mitochondria. That's the thing that makes this energy. Free radicals destroy it and break it down. This is one thing we do. We actually test for heavy metals because we know that those are the key to freeing up the body's immune system and freeing up the brain function, because these get stuck in the brain. And what we do, this is a heavy metal test. This person is really high in lead and thallium, and the mercury is pretty low on this person. But this is just by doing a urine test, and you get you pee in a cup and you send it off to the lab, and they test your urine for the metals that you're pouring out of your body. But this is not a good test. We need to take an agent that clean the pond water was, and I went right to the middle and the top and took it, right? But if I stirred up the pond and got it all brown and then took that water and tested it, it probably would show something else. So when we do a test to see what's going on in the body, we do what's called a provoked test. We give an agent that stirs up the muck, and now look at this person's lead is off the chart, and the thallium is even, it's about the same. But we want to know how many toxins are in there, because that's going to tell us spectrum. We can't do this test on people like 12 and younger, but we can test the mom. And why would we test mom? Because we know that mom passed all of those chemicals down to the kids through the blood. So it's so important for us to test mom. Anybody that's going to have a baby, you know, when we have patients that go, yeah, I'm going to get pregnant and have a baby, you go, let's get you through a cleanse first, because we know it's passed down for 4 generations, and they're in mom's bone, because when mom's bone gets broken apart to get the calcium out to give to the new baby, the heavy metals come with it. So we wonder why 1 out of 2 children in this country are going to be autistic by 2030. 1 out of 2 is estimated to be in the autism spectrum. Can you imagine that? That means you have 1 healthy kid and 1 kid to take care of the other country. It's not happening in the Amish part of the United States, where they don't have any of this stuff. So what is causing it? Well, number 1, these kids' buckets are filled with too many toxins. Nobody's paying attention to it. And when they're born, they're given more toxins, because everybody's got to be vaccinated. I'm not saying anything yay or nay about vaccines. I'm just saying it's another toxin put into another already toxic body. So I hope this gives you guys a little information. I think we have if you want, we have a questionnaire you can fill out on your toxicity level. And is Carol, are you still here?
Yeah.
Do you want to, those have you, but these are, yeah, and this is yeah, she's already filled out the long one. Did you ever bring it in?
Yeah, she just did.
Oh, okay, good. But, so you guys can fill these out, since you're basically almost all patients here. And then we'll go over it with you and find out what your toxic load is, because getting the pressure off the nerve is great, and it needs to happen. because we want you to be able to walk and function and lift and twist and raise your arms up, right, Louise? But the more important, I can't say it's more important, we gotta make sure you don't get these chronic illnesses that are gonna kill you. You know, we want you to stay healthy. And even if it doesn't kill you, it might make your brain not work. So if you can get some help with that too if you want to get your, so does that all make sense?
Yes.
Any questions on any of that? So what we do is, Carol is a nutritional consultant here. She helps put people through the detoxification program that we do, and I work with a guy named Dr. Daniel Papa, who's the leading guy in the world on cellular detox, cellular inflammation. And there's only about 20 or 30 of us that are working this close with this guy. And I happen to be one of two in Northern California, be able to be part of that program. But we really have made a lot of difference and changed a lot of people's lives. One thing that we will do tonight, if you want, there's a test to help us find out how your, basically how inflamed your cells are. When your cells are inflamed, like this, they put off, it's almost like if you were to go to and the paint came off on your hand, that's called oxidation. When free radicals get to your cells, they oxidize the cells, and it puts off a product that's in your urine. When we test that, we do a meta-oxy reaction test, and it will help us determine how much inflammation is in your body. It will give us an idea of a rating of where you're at. Most people are going to be, we already know, most people are already pretty toxic anyway, but it's kind of a gauge. It will help us find out where you're at. They don't even really do these. I wish they did this at Path Lab or LabCorp because it's so much more information than some of the basic things that they do. Bottom line is, if this is how much energy you have in the morning and this is how much you need to put out, anybody ever known anybody with a bank account that that's how much money you make and that's your expenses? I think I knew one person like that once, right? Just kidding. But when it's like this, you have to borrow to pay that debt. So when your body's not working well and your nervous system isn't working well and you're still trying to get by, you're eating up your body, you're taking valuable recesses out of the organs and the different glands in your body to keep you alive. What we want is your expenses. Wouldn't that be a lot better? Go, this is how much energy I have every day and that's all I have to do. Boy, I got a lot of energy left. Smart, and I'm not saying I'm the smartest guy around, but you'd probably pay down your loan. So as your body gets healthy and you have extra energy, this is used to repair your body and repair your organs and repair your nervous system. So we can go into a lot of other things. We talk about different ways to eat and stuff, but you know, the main thing is success and failure. Doing something, if it makes sense that you possibly have toxic overload in your body, then do something about it. Fill out the questionnaire, do the urine test, have a consultation with Carol and I. We will offer you free consultations to go over this. So, pretty much what I want to talk about. Carol, do you want to talk about your experience real quick? Now she has to.
Thank you.
This is Carol, and she went through this program. Just give a brief summary of what you did.
I'll just back up everything he said because a few years ago I was very, very ill. And it started probably 2006, I think, and I couldn't sleep. I had horrible hormone problems. I ended up not being able to work anymore because I had suffered from chronic fatigue syndrome. That's what I was diagnosed with. But I kept getting worse and worse, and they finally diagnosed me with an autoimmune disease. And that was back in 2014, 2015. I literally had enough energy for maybe 2 hours a day. That was it. And the rest of the day, I would just spend on a couch, and I didn't sleep well. It was just very bad. I could hardly walk up steps. It was awful. And so then I had to quit my job because I couldn't work. And I had to take early retirement because I couldn't work. And I had tried everything, I'd been to lots of doctors and lots of tests and tried so many things. But it wasn't until, I started with this program, and I'm a chiropractic patient of Dr. McCollum, and he told me about it, and I started the program, that things started to change, and I noticed it, with my energy level, just, I would have an extra hour a day and think, that was wonderful, you know? In fact, sometimes I would feel wrong, because I don't know if you've had that experience, but I felt bad for so many years that when I did feel better, I thought something else was wrong, because it was not my normal. My normal was not feeling well. Anyway, so it helped me quite a bit. My energy is normal now. I get up at 6:30 in the morning, I go to bed about 11. At night, I can go all day without getting tired. A lot of it is food, as Dr. McCollum mentioned, which is why I got so involved on the food side of it, because there are many different types of foods that can actually cause the gut to not work properly, and then even nutrients don't get into your body. They can't get into the body. Or bad stuff comes in because the intestinal lining is not in good shape. So a lot of that can be helped just with choosing the right foods. So I work on that, as well as just taking people as a coach through the system we have for actually detoxing toxins out of the body. So that's what I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Carol.
you for